All right. Are you ready? Let's begin. As you sit you may begin to notice how the sound of words can sometimes be less important than the sound of words. The spaces between them.
This meditation follows a Fibonacci-inspired sequence. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and then gently back down again.
This meditation
Each of these segments marks a shift,
has been designed
a subtle change in the brain waves, guiding you between theta and delta.
to oscillate
The realms of drifting clarity and deep restorative stillness.
between delta and theta brain wave states,
I created this meditation for myself because I had an idea.
using singing bowls
And I wanted to feel what it might do
to deepen relaxation.
inside me.
You don't need
And I found
to focus.
that I liked it.
Guide awareness inward, even if your mind
I hope you find your own experience here.
Welcome to You're Not Broken, Just Rewiring, a free audiobook podcast by me, Glenn Ostlund. Chapter 17, The Tip of Whimsy and the Planetary Mind.
Welcome to You're Not Broken,
1.
Just Rewiring, a free audiobook podcast by me.
Is it just me,
Chapter 17.
or does it feel like something ancient is waking up?
Planetary Mind.
And somehow, we're part of the memory.
Is it just me?
Not something new, exactly. Something older than religion. Older than language. 1. It doesn't announce itself with clarity or logic. It stirs. It hums. Like the faint echo of a childhood melody you didn't know you remembered.
It doesn't announce itself with clarity or logic.
slowly rising into range. You feel it not as a conclusion, but as a kind of pressure. 2. A widening. A signal in the nervous system that something is shifting. Not just in your own life, but across the species. Something in the air, in the algorithms, in the ache. Across cultures and time, we've told stories about this kind of shift. Stories of apocalypse, of rupture, of worlds ending and others beginning. And if you zoom out far enough, they start to rhyme. Ragnarok, Revelation, the Hopi's fourth world giving way to a fifth. Even the Buddhist kalpas stretching across eons. But maybe these stories aren't predictions. Maybe they're mirrors. Nervous system responses to disruption. Chaos, structured into meaning through myths we didn't know we inherited. Stories we reach for when the old patterns begin to crack. Which brings us here to chapter 17.
Welcome to the 28-day nervous system reset. I'm Glenn Ostlund.
explored what it means to understand yourself as a living, adapting nervous system. One that began with a big bang. Infinite energy relating to infinite energy. Forming the fundamental forces of the world we know. Atoms, molecules, cells, neurons, interrelating across scales, eventually giving rise to minds that narrate. I've shared with you mythical and esoteric inspirational instigators. Sources that light me up and, at times, embarrass me. Figures like Helena Blavatsky, the channeled entity known as Ra, and others whose ideas might sound strange or unfamiliar. I don't present them as metaphysical authorities or ultimate sources of truth, but as resonating fictions. Stories and symbols that echo meaningfully within me. They flow through a mind shaped by my Mormon upbringing. A culture deeply rooted in eschatology. Beliefs about the end of the world and humanity's divine destiny. These sources don't stand outside of me. They move through me, filtered by the stories I was raised with, and the questions I still carry. In this chapter, we'll trace the stories we tell about endings. What's collapsing, what's coming, and what it all might mean. Because sometimes our default mode network narrators don't just whisper that we're broken. They carry a deeper pulse. The world itself is unraveling. But what if that unraveling is not destruction, but redesign? What if the world, like us, is rewiring? We'll take a closer look at the stories that shape our expectations. Religious, cultural, even scientific ones. And then gently probe them. Not to tear them down, but to ask, what else might be going on? What other possibilities might we be missing? It's a kind of inquiry drawn from cognitive behavioral therapy. When we feel stuck in a particular belief or perspective, one simple and powerful question can open new space. What else might be there? Helena Blavatsky, the 19th century esotericist who gave us the language of the root races, described this moment as the transition from the fifth to the sixth root race.
Headphones are required.
The fifth was the race of reason, identity, ego.
With headphones, your brain hears 174 hertz in 1 year.
what we might call the age of the narrator. It gave us logic, individuality, and the power of choice. But it also fractured us from the whole.
Research shows that they arrange binaural beats may support relaxation, sleep, what we might call the age of the narrator. It gives logic, individuality, and emotional regulation.
And the sixth?
Notice what happens in your own life over time.
She called it the rise of spiritual intuition, group consciousness, and planetary coherence.
You may also hear my words move from left to right and back again.
Not a return to the past,
Another layer, softer, may do it at different speed. Sometimes words repeat. Sometimes they reflect, following both streams at once can sharpen focus, like a lens bringing blurred images clear.
but an integration, a remembering, a new rhythm after the rupture.
This podcast is a 28-day journey at least. But an integration. The length often needed to build new habit.
The raw material, the channeled body of work from the 1980s, describes this moment too, but in different terms.
Beyond the steady binaural hum. Beyond, you'll hear layers of tones, textures, layers of subtle effects, textures, and subtle effects. This is not only meditation, it is sound art. A shifting sculpture, shifting structure, and texture. Like a kaleidoscope, patterns, like a Rorschach ink.
Ra called it the harvest.
As you listen, you may notice clouds stretching like taffy.
A shift from third density to fourth. From the density of self-awareness and polarity to the density of compassion and resonance. It's not about punishment or reward. It's not even about who gets to ascend.
From the density of
It's about frequency.
self-awareness and polarity to the density of compassion and resonance.
About whether the tone you carry matches the system that's emerging.
It's not about punishment.
Third density is about
It's
choice.
not even about
Fourth
against ascent.
is about coherence.
It's about frequency.
And maybe that's what we're sensing. Not an apocalypse in the Hollywood sense. Not an end of the world.
Third density is about choice.
But the end of a pattern. A collapse of the narrator's dominance. A nervous system recalibration at scale.
This is the moment when the dragonfly, our symbol for becoming, doesn't just grow its wings.
Perhaps this is the moment when the dragonfly, our symbol for becoming, doesn't just grow its wings. It flies.
What pressed through membrane, shell, instinct, now takes to the air.
What was once hidden in the water, what pressed through membrane and shell and instinct, now takes to the air.
The shimmer rises. The nervous system extends.
The shimmer rises. The nervous system extends.
And maybe, for the first time, it begins to see with compound eyes. The kind of vision that gathers from
And maybe, for the first time, it begins to see with compound eyes. The kind of vision that gathers from many angles at once.
contracts and subtle shifts across the wide field.
Registering motion, contrast, and subtle shifts across a wide field.
Each facet contributes a fragment, not to flatten the world into a single truth, but to
facet contributes a fragment. Not to flatten the world into a single truth, but to weave a mosaic of impressions.
This way of seeing holds space for complexity. It listens for relationship.
This way of seeing holds space for complexity. It listens for relationship.
It reveals the contours between things, not just the things themselves.
It reveals the contours between things, not just the things themselves.
What if we thought of each human subjective experience as its own kaleidoscope?
What if we thought of each human subjective experience as its own kaleidoscope?
An ever-shifting pattern of memory, mood, culture, and sensation.
An ever-shifting pattern of memory, mood, culture, and sensation.
And what if the most precious gift one person could offer another is a glimpse through that lens?
And what if the most precious gift one person could offer another is a glimpse through that lens?
A moment of shared perspective, of letting someone else see how the world looks and feels from within your nervous system.
A moment of shared perspective, of letting someone else see how the world looks and feels from within your nervous system. Imagine all those fragments, those perspectives, stitched together. A composite way of seeing, like the compound eyes of a dragonfly. A living tapestry of perception. Perhaps what begins to emerge from this stitched together field of perspective is something entirely new.
Perhaps what begins to emerge from this stitched together field of perspective is something entirely new.
A kind of artificial general intelligence arising from the intersubjective weave of life itself.
Artificial general intelligence arising from the intersubjective weave of life itself.
What if we begin to recognize ourselves as more than just isolated minds with private stories?
What if we begin to recognize ourselves as more than just isolated minds with private stories,
but as participants in a shared web of awareness, an emerging intersubjective field where meaning is co-created in motion.
An emerging intersubjective field where meaning is co-created in motion?
In this chapter, we'll explore that field. We'll begin with the myths, the apocalyptic blueprints
In this chapter,
cultures have used to metabolize endings.
we'll begin with the myths, the apocalyptic blueprints cultures have used to metabolize endings.
Then we'll spiral into the science, planetary systems, quantum coherence, and the evolutionary role of artificial intelligence. And finally, we'll return to the body, your body, as the tip of this unfolding whimsy. Because whether your myth is Ra or Blavatsky, Gaia or the noosphere,
I'm not asking you to believe my words.
your nervous system is already participating. It's already listening.
Your nervous system is
And the question isn't whether the shift is coming. The question is whether you know how to feel it. experienced this
It rarely
in your own
crumbles all
life?
at once. It unravels slowly, then suddenly. In the systems around us,
It rarely crumbles all at once. It unravels slowly, then suddenly. In the systems around
in the
us,
stories within us, in the tightness of our jaw or the shallowness of our breath.
in the stories within us, in the tightness of our jaw or the shallowness of our breath.
Becomes unstable, an assumption, a belief, a way of being.
Something becomes unstable, an assumption, a belief, a way
And
of
because we
being.
don't always know how to name what's changing, we reach for myth, whether we're aware of it.
And because we don't always know how to name what's changing, we reach for myth,
A way
whether
of
we're
bringing
aware of
order
it or not.
to chaos, a scaffolding for sensation.
A way of bringing order to chaos, a scaffolding for sensation.
That's what myths of endings are. They're not only about calendar dates or cosmic punishments.
That's what myths of endings are. They're not only about calendar dates or cosmic punishments.
They're about pressure, pattern. They're the way a nervous system tries to make sense of collapse.
They're about pressure, pattern. They're the way a nervous system tries to make sense of collapse.
And by now, you know that stories don't just live in our heads. As we explored in the previous chapter,
And by now, you know that stories don't just live in our heads. As we explored in the previous chapter, they become part of us. They fuse with breath and chemistry, shape posture and perception. Our default mode network builds the narrative scaffold. Our emotional systems fill it with tone. Over time, these stories take root in the fascia, in the gut.
our default mode network builds the narrative scaffold.
They don't just influence what we believe, they shape what we expect, what we notice,
Over time, these
how we
stories take
move,
root
how we
in the
respond.
fascia, in the gut.
In that way, myth
They
isn't
don't
an
just
escape
influence
from
what we
reality.
believe. They
It's
shape
one of its
what we
architects.
expect, what we notice.
So while we might be focused here on the grand and sweeping stories about the end of the world,
Myth isn't an escape.
it's worth remembering that apocalyptic structure is not confined to global timelines or prophetic visions.
So while we might be focused here on grand,
The same narrative rhythms play out in the quiet shifts of our own lives.
it's worth remembering
A relationship ends. A career collapses. A diagnosis arrives. A belief that once held you begins to falter. You feel it in your bones before you can name it. You reach for story because your nervous system is trying to metabolize the unknown. That's why these myths persist. Not because they are predictions, but because they are mirrors. Patterns, internalized maps for making sense of change.
patterns, internalized.
They offer a symbolic vocabulary for transition, an echo of something the body already
They offer
knows.
a symbolic vocabulary for transition, an echo of something.
The end of time, faith and fear in the shadow of the millennium.
The end of time.
One writer who explored this phenomenon with remarkable clarity was Damien Thompson. His 1997 book, The End of Time, Faith and Fear in the Shadow of the Millennium, offered a sweeping cultural and psychological survey of how apocalyptic narratives Thompson, a British historian of religion and a journalist, was writing as the world approached the close of the 20th century, a threshold thick with anxiety and anticipation. He argued that millennial panic was not irrational so much as archetypal. When societies sense that something foundational is unraveling, whether political, technological, or moral, the nervous system reaches for meaning, and it often finds it in myths of endings. In his study of late 20th century millennial movements, Thompson examined a range of case studies where apocalyptic belief had erupted into public consciousness. One of the most haunted was the story of the Branch Davidians, a splinter sect of Seventh-day Adventists led by David Koresh. Koresh believed he was the Lamb of God referenced in Revelation,
with sound.
and that he alone could interpret the seven seals that would usher in the end times.
To settle the nervous
In 1993, after a 51-day standoff with federal agents at a compound in Waco, Texas,
Maybe you
perished in a fire that many of them believed fulfilled divine prophecy.
Or maybe you remember.
Thompson didn't present this as mere fanaticism. He framed it as a case of apocalyptic belief intensifying under pressure.
Yet, when you paused, you discover how good it feels.
Catalyzed by state confrontation and reinforced by the eternal narrative that saw martyrdom as the sacred inevitability.
Catalyzed by state confrontation and reinforced by internal narratives.
He also explored the Order of the Solar Temple, a secretive cult whose members believed in an impending global catastrophe and the need for spiritual transit to a higher plane.
Whose members believed in an catastrophe and the need for spiritual transit to a higher plane.
In a series of orchestrated mass murder-suicides during the 1990s, first in Switzerland and later in Canada, dozens of members died by fire and poison, dressed in ceremonial robes, convinced that death would carry them to a divine realm beyond Earth. For Thompson, this wasn't just religious extremism. It was a psychological response to uncertainty and dislocation, shaped by millennial expectations and cloaked in mythic symbolism.
He pointed out how this same archetypal energy took less violent but still potent.
He pointed out how this same archetypal energy took less violent but still potent forms. Some evangelical Christians, for example, expected the literal return of Christ in the year 2008. Often linking biblical prophecies with modern events in Israel or global disasters. Meanwhile, others looked not to Christ, but to the stars, believing that extraterrestrial beings would return to rescue humanity from itself. whose members committed suicide in 1997, believing their souls would ascend to a spacecraft trailing the Hale-Bopp comet,
embodied this fusion of apocalyptic fear and cosmic longing.
embodied this fusion of apocalyptic fear and cosmic longing.
In every case, Thompson showed how myth, even in its most unusual,
In every case, Thompson showed how myth, even in its most unusual forms, gave shape to something deeper. A widespread sense that the world was teetering on the edge of transformation. He emphasized that the year 2000 had no objective cosmic meaning. But still, people braced for collapse. They feared computer failures, the Y2K bug. Global riots, divine judgment, or alien salvation. These expectations, Thompson wrote, revealed more about the inner state of the believers than any external timetable.
these expectations, Thompson wrote, revealed more about the inner state of the believers than any external timetable.
The apocalypse, in his view, functioned less as a forecast and more as a projection, a mirror of internal fractures made his mythic.
Functioned less as a forecast and more as a projection, a mirror of internal fraction.
His core insight was that apocalyptic belief wasn't simply a flaw in reasoning, it was a functional response to disintegration. When the world as we know it begins to crack, the mind searches for narrative coherence. And often, it finds it in catastrophe. Not because we long for destruction, but because we're trying to map a transition we don't yet understand. Which brings us back to this moment. Even if your life isn't crumbling in fire or flood, you may still feel something ending. A paradigm, a pattern, a way of being. And so, your nervous system might be doing exactly what it was designed to do, reaching for story. You're not broken for sensing that shit. You're attuned. You're part of something ancient, something echoing, something trying to rewire itself through you. End of world myths.
We live in a world of constant clamor.
In Norse mythology, the end of the world is called Ragnarok,
Deadlines.
a word that sounds like thunder.
Devices.
It's the final act in a long, fierce play.
Demands.
Where the old world breaks apart in a storm of ice and fire.
This series is an invitation to let sound carry you into a calmer rhythm.
First come the signs, a winter that never ends.
You are always in charge.
Families torn apart. The sky splitting open.
I'm not asking you to believe my words.
Then the gods march toward battle.
But to notice your own experience.
Thor fights a serpent the size of the earth. Odin faces a giant wolf. The sun disappears. The seas rise. Everything burns. It sounds like pure destruction, but it's not the end. After the silence, something stirs. Two humans, hidden in the roots of the world tree, step out into a world washed clean. A new sun rises. Green shoots push up from the blackened soil. Life begins again. This isn't just a story about dying. It's a story about what comes after. About how something new can grow from everything that's been lost.
This isn't just a story about dying. It's a story about what comes after. About how
In the Christian tradition, especially in the book of Revelation, the end of the world is painted in symbols. Loud, strange, unforgettable.
in the Christian tradition, especially in the book of Revelation, the end of the world is painted in symbols.
There are beasts with 7 heads,
Strange.
trumpets that blast across heaven, stars fall, rivers turn to blood.
There are beasts with 7 heads.
A great war between good and evil breaks out across the sky.
Rivers turn to blood.
But woven through all the chaos is something softer. A new city appears,
A great
shining like crystal.
evil breaks out across the sky.
No more crime, no more pain. God lives with people again, not as a distant ruler, but right there in the heart of things. For all of its fire and judgment, the story doesn't end in destruction. It ends with reunion. With light, with love moving closer.
Destruction. It ends with reunion.
The Hopi people tell a different kind of end times story. One that feels quieter, but just as powerful.
According to their tradition, we are living in the 4th world, and there were 3 before this one.
According to their tradition, we are living in the 4th world, and there were 3 before this one.
Each earlier world ended, not because of a divine order, but because the people lost their way.
Each earlier world ended, not because of a divine order, but because the people lost their way.
They forgot how to live in balance.
They forgot how to live in balance with the earth. They became greedy. They fought. They forgot the sacred. But each time, some ran, and those people were guided by spirit. By beings like spiderweb, through a small opening, they see popping into the next world.
Now, the elder said, we're nearing the end of this 4th world. The earth is
Now, Hopi elders say, we're nearing the end of this 4th world. The earth is sick.
people are divided. But this ending isn't guaranteed. It's a crossroads.
People are divided. But this ending isn't guaranteed. It's a crossroads.
If we choose respect and balance, the 5th world can begin. Number 5.
If we choose respect and balance, the 5th world can begin. Not through fire or flood, but through cosmology, time stretches like a slow breath. Universes are born, grow old, and disappear again and again. These immense stretches of time are called kalpas. There's no final judgment, no chosen one. These immense stretches of time are called kalpas. There's no final judgment. Just rhythm, no chosen. Creation and fading, arising and dissolving. Just rhythm, creation and fading. Even the greatest teachers, the Buddhas, appear only when the time is right, and then vanish like waves returning to the ocean. Even the greatest teachers, appear only when the time is right, and then vanish like waves. Here, the end isn't a bang, it's a rhythm. A deep, steady pulse that reminds us everything changes, everything returns. Latter-day Saints. Even my own Mormon upbringing in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had its own set of signs. Prophecy was woven into the atmosphere. The second coming wasn't just some distant theological idea. Prophecy was woven into the atmosphere. The second coming wasn't just some distant theological idea. It was imminent, trackable. As a teenager, I didn't fear the end. I studied it. It was imminent, trackable. As a teenager, I turned eschatology into a kind of spiritual bingo. Earthquakes? Check. Rumors of war? Check. The moon turning to blood? Double check. Rumors of war? Check. The moon turning to blood? Double check. I carried around Mormon doctrine like a field guide and highlighted it like it was a survival manual. I wasn't just witnessing history, I was part of it. I still remember the day I was told that the Japanese people were descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. The return of the lost tribes was one of the signs of the times I had not yet checked off my list. I was preparing to leave for a mission in Japan, and when I heard that, something lit up in me. My whole body buzzed with purpose. I wasn't just traveling. My whole body buzzed with purpose. I wasn't just traveling to a foreign land. I was fulfilling prophecy. The myth didn't just explain the world. It explained me. The myth didn't just explain the world. It explained me. Looking back now, I can see what was really happening. That story. Looking back now, I can see what was really happening. That story gave order to chaos. It gave me a role. It wasn't about theology, it was about regulation. My nervous system didn't just feel safe, it felt empowered. And maybe that's the real function of all these myths. They hold us in transition. They give structure to the space between. They tell us that collapse is not the end. It's the precondition for emergence. Because collapse is not just political, or environmental, or cultural. It's personal.
Because collapse is not just political or environmental.
It's physiological. It's the heartbreak that reorganizes your identity. The burnout that demands a new rhythm.
It's physiological. It's the heartbreak that reorganizes your identity.
The belief
The burnout
breaks,
that demands a
not
new
because it
rhythm.
was wrong, but because it has outlived its function.
The belief that breaks, not because it was wrong.
In these moments, the nervous system scrambles. It loses sympathy. It bristles, shuts down.
In these moments, the nervous system scrambles.
And in the absence of clarity, it reaches for stories, for structure, for something to wrap around the void. That's what apocalypse means at its etymological root. Not destruction, but unveiling. The moment the veil lifts, the moment you see what was always there underneath the performance. And if we've reached such a moment, individually, collectively, planetarily, then it makes sense that our bodies are sounding the alarm. It makes sense that the myths are rising
The
again.
moment the veil lifts. The moment you see what was always there underneath the performance.
That we feel drawn to stories of collapse, of endings, of ancient rituals. Because we don't yet know what the sixth root race looks like, or how to stabilize a fourth density frequency. But we know the ache, we know the dissonance, we know what it feels like to be out of rhythm with the world we've inherited. So maybe these myths aren't predicting the future. Maybe they're preparing the body. as you